So once again, I'm very happy to be here and to share this time with you. I thought I would talk about divine paradox, but what is a paradox? Well, first off, it's two ducks sitting next to each other on the water. Or a paradox is Swiss cheese. Swiss cheese has lots of holes, but the more holes you have in the cheese, the less cheese you have. The more cheese you have, the more holes you have. Thus, the more cheese you have, the less cheese you have. That's a paradox. Wait, what? A paradox is anything that causes you to go, wait, what? Like mind blowing. You know, I was calling Carla a paradigm buster. I love that. Actually, that's a title I would love to carry. So I might borrow your title as I titled you, as I queened you, the paradox buster. So we're playing with the quantum. I've been playing in the quantum consciously for 12, 13, 15 years, something like that, quite a while before it was kind of the buzzword. And so I love laying out unity principles with quantum science. And so the first thing that we want to know is that there are different layers of consciousness. So we have our relative world of the reality as we see it on the news. By the way, I just have to say this is a paradox. I see Rob Robinson on the Zoom screen. I see him out my window. He happens to be my husband. So it's very weird to see him in both places at once. That's a paradox. Anyway, that's not anything to do with what I'm talking about, except for he just popped into my awareness. I think that was funny. So we have the layers of consciousness. We have the relative, we have the absolute. We have, if we know anything about spiral dynamics, we are ever evolving in consciousness. So a paradox is actually defined or encompassed when you look at different layers of consciousness. Because in truth, in absolute truth, truth covers like both ends of the paradox. The paradox can kind of feel like, you know, the polarities almost. And yet what we know is that we are ever evolving. As we are ever evolving, we have the capacity to hold both ends of the paradox. In my book, a little commercial, Paradox of Awakening, which is available on Amazon, along with my other books available on Amazon. We'll give you those links later if you'd like them. But in my book on paradox, I define it as a seemingly absurd or self-contradictory statement or proposition that when investigated or explained may prove to be well-founded and true. So the paradox of quantum physics and unity principles is that they may use a little bit of different language, but they're actually speaking the same thing. So when we take our basic unity foundational principles, our 5 principles, and we lay it over and under and around and through, we just get this quantified, that's a made-up word, this quantified experience of our principles that can then catapult us in our own evolution of consciousness. So the first lesson from quantum physics is that the world is participatory, meaning that things respond to being observed. The second is that the universe behaves paradoxically. Unfortunately, our minds are not comfortable with paradoxical situations because our minds have been developed in a binary fashion. We are not comfortable with the ambiguity of unresolved situations. And we too often settle for win-lose compromise or less than eloquent solutions in order to obtain a quick fix and to resolve our anxiety. That means we don't like the unknown. And the paradox is our greatest gift comes in the unknown. Our greatest evolution comes in the unknown, and we don't like it. Paradox. It's brilliant. I used to hate not knowing, hate it, hate it, hate it. Oh my gosh, would do everything in my power to know something. And through my experience, and that was really came through my work, deep dives into the Magdalene mysteries and some priestess process work that took me for a couple of years into deep initiatory work, I found this place of like surrender in the not knowing. I found this expansiveness in the not knowing. And it's almost like to get to divine mind, you can't know. Like, and definitely to get to the quantum, you can't know, you cannot think your way there. But when you bypass your mind and land in this unknowing, you have the infinite at your fingertips. So in my work as a transitional consultant and an interim minister, my work is to expand the gap of not knowing. And that applies to everybody and everything. You know, when we have something show up and it's like, well, it causes us to go wobble, I say that's brilliant, because any wobble that we have opens us to a new evolution of consciousness. Now, it may not even always be fun. It may not be easy. Pretty much won't be easy until we surrender to it. But the quantum can also be defined as the kingdom of heaven, as the void, as creation itself, as essence, as infinite possibilities and unlimited potential. It's about that space. It can be that still small space within. And when you access that clearly, you land in that place that we touched in our meditation, you actually enter a portal into the quantum. So the quantum is the wave of the infinite. And the material, this is some version of quantum physics. I've had quantum physicists tell me, you don't quite have that right. And I said, I don't care. It's close enough for my analogies, right? I've had that happen twice, so maybe I should learn a little bit more. But it works for our experience. And that we are vibrational beings. And vibration, when it's very low, is very dense. And when we raise our vibration, we raise it high enough, we become from a particle to the infinite, to a wave. That's the basis of quantum. And then when we pay attention or we observe something in the wave, it is like pulling down. It's like, oh, plucking this idea out of the quantum and making it manifest, making it material in our experience here. Now, way back in the day, Nikola Tesla said, if you want to understand the universe, begin to think in terms of vibration, energy, and frequency. And quantum science gives us the language to marry with our spiritual knowing that we already know. So principle number one, there's only one presence, one power active in the universe. We call it God, and God is good all the time. That one power is unity language, divine mind, quantum language, the quantum field, the field of the infinite. Simplified, the wave itself is the infinite, is the quantum, and all that is. And the particle is the material manifestation. So there's no judgment in any of that. If you don't like your particle, we now have tools. We now have tools to change our particle, but only by accessing the quantum. More about that later or not, but that's the work that I do with my clients and my ministries and my small groups and all of that. Principle number two is that we have that Christ potential within us, that we are divine beings here to make manifest the glory of God, that we are individualized expressions of God, that all people everywhere have that potential within them, because we're created in the image and likeness of God, or source, or spirit, or oneness. We have it backwards. We create a God in our image, and that doesn't work very well, in my opinion. But that's what we tend to do. Einstein said this: we are slowed down sound and light waves, the quantum, a walking bundle of frequencies tuned into the cosmos. We are souls dressed up in sacred biochemical garments, and our bodies are the instruments through which our souls play their music. I love that. And Hafiz says, I wish I could show you the astonishing light of your own being, which goes right with India's and Lisa's beautiful singing of the song, I Am Light. we are light. We just forget our truth. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. It's like we're not wrong, we're not broken, we don't guilt ourselves, we just simply remember. So that quantum, that wave, we are a particle, but we're not limited by the way the particle shows up. In fact, when we acknowledge our Christ presence, that we are one with the divine, it becomes not only our opportunity to realize that full potential, but our responsibility. In this world, it is now our responsibility. Why us? Because we know it, right? We teach it. Now we have to embody it. Our third principle is the law of mind, or transcended, I call it now the law of vibration. That which we pay attention to is what we see in the universe. That which we focus on, that which we observe, quantum science, is what we see. So do we see it because it's there, or do we see it because we've observed it? Paradoxical questions here. So the law of mind says that what we think about is what we experience. But the laws can transcend themselves with understanding and evolution. So in my book, another commercial, in my book, I talk about the law of gravity and the law of aerodynamics. The law of gravity says everything falls to the earth. The law of aerodynamics uses the law of gravity to create our airborne flight. That's how we become paradoxically aligned, right? We use the law of mind, action, the law of thinking, and we transcend it with the law of vibration. And we've embodied, one more time, quantum science to some degree. So my work is all about vibrations and frequencies, and it's filled in all the gaps for me around my unity principles. Einstein said, you've all heard this one, right? We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. That's on every level. Our health, our healing, our abundance or lack thereof, it's racism, it's climate, it's relational, it's everything. So how do we move from the level that we created it? Because we stand here on that same level and we go, I need to fix it. And I fight and fight and fight and fight and fight. And I argue. But nothing's going to change there, or it might change, but it's excruciatingly painful. But as soon as you raise your vibration, as soon as you access that absolute, the quantum, then you're in a different level, a different playing field. And from here you go, oh, that's easy, right? Or, oh, that's possible, right? And then things can begin to change. Law of vibration, that which you are vibrating, if you're vibrating fear or anxiety or guilt or shame or blame, that's what you're going to see. If you're vibrating oneness or allness or love or compassion, then that's what you're going to experience on the planet. Now, it doesn't mean you won't have bumps, right? It doesn't mean anything about the experiences you have. What it does mean is that you have tools to navigate through life in human form, through life on the planet. And it's not always pretty, life on the planet. But when we know these truths and we become these truths, we have an easier possibility of navigating them. Charles Fillmore, our co-founder, writes in one of my favorite books, The Atom Smashing Power. He said, well, first, his mind was simply fascinated by the idea of the atom, this tiny little particle of substance and the enormous energy locked up in it. So that was cutting edge science at the time that Charles was alive on the planet. At other times, he thought of the atom as the very essence of spiritual energy, of spirit mind itself. If Charles were on the planet today, he would be cutting edge in our quantum science and probably beyond, because he was always out there evolving his own consciousness. Now, I always like to throw a joke or two in. I gave you one when we started, but here's a joke. So vibration, energy, and frequency is measured in hertz. Just a caveat, setting up the dirt. Hertz. So the doctor says, does your migraine happen at regular frequency? Me, yes, it really hurts. I know. I tell bad jokes with such frequency that it does hurt. I'm kind of known for my bad jokes. All right. Why can't humans hear over or under a certain frequency? It hurts too much. And at what frequency does laughter become painful? At gigahertz. I can't help myself. So, principle number 4, affirmations. Prayer and meditation is how we make direct connect with spirit, with source. We go to headquarters. Charles Fillmore used to say, I go to headquarters. He goes straight to headquarters. He wants a direct experience. True prayer brings an exalted, this is Charles, true prayer brings about an exalted radiation of energy. And when it is accompanied by faith, judgment, and love, the word of truth bursts forth in a stream of light that, when held in mind, illumines, uplifts, and glorifies. Isn't that yummy? It's like when I read Atom Smashing Power 25 years ago, when we had to, before we got in school or in school or whenever we read it, I read those words and we're like, oh, that's cool. But now that I know quantum science and know my own experience, I'm like, oh, he was so brilliant. He understood it before we had the language for it, which I think is really powerful. So when we come into what I call coherence or resonance or alignment with the field of non-resistance, everything can recalibrate. So heart math, the secular, we probably all know heart math. It's not too far from you in that part of the world. It's the secular science that says when our heart and our brain are in coherence, our bodies recalibrate. We come into this homeostasis where everything can recalibrate into potentially healing or grace or ease or peace, all of those things. And so quantum science supports that and takes it bigger. It's not only mind and heart, it's all of our very being. When we come into coherence, our resistance to whatever's happening disappears. And like magic happens, miraculous happens. Rumi says, try not to resist the change that comes your way. Instead, let life live through you. And do not worry that your life is turning upside down. How do you know that the side that you're used to is better than the one to come? Right? We fight so hard to stay in the known, to stay where we know, to stay in, even if it's uncomfortable, it's known. But yet even Rumi's saying, just let life happen. And do not worry. Jesus said, do not worry, but instead trust. Instead, get into alignment, get into flow, get into oneness with that which we call God. We sit in the silence until it silences, or more true, disengages with your monkey mind. Like if you're a meditator and you try to silence your monkey mind, we know that that's really hard, but we're trying to silence it at the level we've created it. So when we drop to the silence, we disengage. The monkey mind can run up here like, a series of clouds in the sky, like just disengage from it, just interrupt the pattern of thinking it means something. Joe Dispenza says, if you want something different, you have to be different. And until you be different, you're going to keep thinking what you've always thought and getting what you've always got. But as soon as you can interrupt that pattern by going to the silence or the quantum or doing a phase change in your consciousness, then all things are possible. Again, it goes right in line with what Einstein said. all those years ago. And principle number 5, I know I'm kind of at the end of my time, but principle number 5 is practice, practice, practice. Put these principles into practice, because they do you absolutely no good to have them in your head or have them on your shelf. Practice these principles. Put them into your being. Charles says, I reserve the right to change your mind. Let your mind be changed by something. Let your mind be blown by something. Let your mind do something different than it's always done. Why? Because we are ever evolving in spiritual consciousness. And the more we evolve, the more beauty we see, the more light that we are, the more aligned that we are, the more fulfilled that we are, the more good we can do in the world. And we're here to make a difference in the world. We're here for a world awakening, or I'm here for a world awakening, for each and every one of us to step into our biggest, boldest, most brilliant becomingness. And it's up to us. So would you like a new world? Are you ready to join me? Then let's do this thing called love, called light, called kindness, called compassion. Together, we will, and we are, and we do change the world. God bless you all. Thank you so much.